Welcome to the Piston Fanatic. I'm your host, Dave Dalton, and I'm excited to share my passion and perspective of our Detroit Pistons as we go on this fantastic journey together. I've been a diehard Piston fan since the days of Dave Bing and Bob Lanier. I've also been a varsity basketball coach of a very successful program in northern Michigan. Currently, my daughter and I are coaching one of the best AAU basketball teams in the country. Before we get started, I'm excited to announce that the great John Beilein, former coach at the University of Michigan and currently the Senior Player Development Advisor for the Pistons, has graciously agreed to appear on a podcast episode of the Piston Fanatic. I've had a couple brief but insightful interactions with Coach Beilein, and I guarantee you will not want to miss it. Today we're going to examine Troy Weaver's transformation process, the just completed preseason, and the current Piston roster. Unlike most GMs in Detroit over the last 50 years, Troy Weaver actually has a plan. Not to make the playoffs this year. He wants to build something that will be sustainable for a long time so that we can go deep into the playoffs year after year. I know the last 3 years have been a struggle to watch. I mean, we've been 63 wins and 157 losses. But like Coach Casey said at the open practice, you're going to want to jump on the bandwagon. Where there's going to be lots of ups and downs this year, but at the end of this thing, there's going to be a pot of gold. In 3 short years, Troy has transformed the Pistons from an aging, mediocre team with lots of bad contracts and no cap space to one of the best young squads in the entire NBA. We now have lots of cap space and lots of flexibility going forward. You can tell the players on this team love each other and are excited to play together. They spend a lot of time working over the summer. They've gone to the Celtics NBA Finals game together. They've gone to Ben Wallace's Hall of Fame induction. They went out and spent a week at Tom Gore's place in California. They've been playing in the Rico Hines summer scrimmages, and you just can tell there's a genuine togetherness on this team, which is exciting. I had the pleasure of attending the open practice recently, and you could just tell the crowd, the energy from the fans is just top notch. They just are so anticipating this upcoming season. You can tell the same thing with the players. Lots of energy, lots of enthusiasm for the upcoming team. I just want you to know, though, that in my lifetime, which is a long time, in the last 50 years, I have never seen the league so deep. You know, the teams from top to bottom have never been this strong. Now, I will say that the top teams in the league have been much better before, like in the 80s and the early 90s. We had the great Lakers and Celtics teams, and then the Pistons were phenomenal, the Bad Boys, and then the Michael Jordan Bulls. Those teams at the top end were better probably than any teams now, but from top to bottom now, the depth of the league is really, really good, and so that makes things even more challenging for our Detroit Pistons. So we're so excited about this team, and then we go into the preseason, and what happens? We get blown out first 4 games. What we have to remember is 10 of our players are 24 years or younger, and it just takes time for players to evolve and to get better. Steph Curry, Isaiah Thomas, Michael Jordan, LeBron, Giannis, those guys all did not win an NBA title until age 27. And so we just got to be patient with our team and just hang in there, and they're going to get better. No matter what happens this year, it's going to be a great year. And if you go in with that attitude, I think you're going to have a fun time. This team could go anywhere from making the playoffs, which I think is not very likely, but they could if everything clicks and everybody stays healthy and everybody plays good together. We could sneak in the play-in. More likely, we're going to probably win 30 to 35 games and probably get a top 10 draft pick, which is not all bad. So we still need another athletic, talented wing that can defend. And in this upcoming draft, there's in the top 14 players, there's probably 9 players, 6'7" to 6'9", that are freaky athletes and have lots of talent and would be great additions to our team. Also, I don't believe for a minute that Troy's plan, I mean, he's confident and he feels really good about the team that he's assembled. He thinks this is the first time he's given Dwayne Casey a real roster that has a chance to compete every night. But Troy's plan, I believe, all along has been that we are really going to be ready to compete next year, and that this summer is a summer that he's going to really go after and make some moves, whether that means probably try to sign a free agent and also another high draft pick. I know there's a lot of debate about tanking or not to tank, and I am not for tanking, but I am for definitely playing the young players. I mean, Stu's got to play. Cade, Ivy, Duran, all the young guys, Livers, they all got to get valuable minutes and develop as players. And regardless of, we need to try to win the games and fight through every game as hard as we can, but those guys need to see the floor and play lots of minutes. But like I said, no matter what happens, I think that it's going to be fun. And the bottom line is we just have to enjoy the season for whatever it holds for us, and we just got to enjoy watching. Jaden Ivey is going to be so exciting this year. He is going to do some amazing things that are going to blow our minds. Duran's going to blow our minds. Cade's going to be spectacular at times. The thing is they're going to be inconsistent. When you have young players this young, there's going to be lots of ups and downs. So like Julio says, we just got to come along and ride the fantastic voyage and just enjoy each minute of it. And even it's going to be disappointing when we lose some games that we thought we should have won. But just like Gloria that was in White Men Can't Jump, probably the greatest sports movie of all time, in my opinion. She said, sometimes when you win, you lose. And sometimes when you lose, you win. And sometimes when you win or lose, you tie. Or sometimes when you tie, you really win or lose. And so, in other words, I know that sounds confusing, but the bottom line is that we just have to enjoy the season. What I'm trying to say, in other words, is no matter what, we are going to win this season. Whether we win a lot of games or we lose, we're still going to come out winners because we're going to watch this young squad with all their energy and all their enthusiasm, and then we get to see them develop, and then we're going to be really, really good in the near future. Almost every year, a young team that had a very poor record the previous year makes a big leap. The Phoenix Suns did this a few years ago, and the Hawks did it, and the Grizzlies have done it recently. And just this last year, the Cavs improved by 22 games. I do think the Pistons are going to make a good jump this year, but I think the real jump is going to come next year, where I think we will win 40 games or more. And I think that we'll be able to get into the playoffs one way or the other. So I really think that next year is going to be our year to take our big leap, and we're going to win probably 40 games or more and get into the playoffs. Well, with all the excitement coming into the preseason, getting blown out in all 4 games is kind of a cold slap in the face. My 3 big takeaways from the preseason were: we shot the ball terrible from 2-point land and 3-point land. We turned it over 20 times a game, and we got killed in the paint. We gave up 100 more points in the paint than we scored. So those are a recipe for disaster, and things are not going to go well unless we can improve on those. I really believe that this team has players and that can shoot the ball, and that we are going to shoot the ball much better. Bojan, he was terrible in the preseason. He shot 30% from 2 and 30% on threes, and he is just a knockdown shooter. He has shot close to 40% for his whole career, even in big playoff games. He shoots like 44% on corner threes. So he's going to get lots of those with Ivy and Cade and Killian dishing him the ball. I think that Stu's made a big leap, and he is going to be a real deal shooting the 3 this year. There's no reason why Sadiq can't shoot the 3 better than he did last year. Cade, I think, and I hope improves his 3-point shooting. Alex Burks has been a consistently outstanding 3-point shooter, and he hasn't played yet. So I think the shooting is going to come around. The turnovers are going to be probably a problem all year. There's going to be lots of ups and downs with the turnovers when you have your young players handling the ball as much as the Pistons' young players are. They're just going to make some turnovers. And with Cade penetrating deep into the teeth of the defense and Ivy going 100 miles an hour, attacking the other team, you're just going to get in situations as a young player where you're going to turn it over. But I do think they're going to improve that. Defense is a bigger concern. We don't have a lot of great gifted defenders on our team. The lineup that we started against the Knicks was probably our 5 guys that you would say probably deserve to start, and that's Stewart and Sadiq and Cade and Bojan and Ivy. So those guys, I think on paper, that's who people would project would be our starters. The lineup that we started against the Knicks is probably on paper the projected lineup that most people think will probably start for us, and that's Bojan, Cade, Ivy, Stewart, and Sadiq. And the challenge with that lineup is there's virtually no size, and Stewart plays way bigger than he is, but he is 6'8", and he can't jump. So teams can just get into the paint, and they have no fear of putting the ball up or forcing the drive because there's not going to be anybody there. And Sadiq is average or probably below average defender. Bojan is certainly not a great athlete and below average defender. Cade works his butt off, and I really do believe he's going to be an above average defender. Ivy will just have to wait and see. He certainly has the athletic gifts to be a great defender, but when you put those guys all out on the court together, you're just going to give up a lot of points in the paint, and you're going to get blow-bys. We had against the Thunder in the preseason game, they just took the ball right at us. And I know a lot of people are worried about the switching everything, and that is maybe something that they're going to have to experiment with. And this is another thing that we can do this year. We need to figure out things and try things and not be afraid to try things and figure out what is going to be our best defense. But I really think that we are going to need to have some size on the floor most of the time. I mean, there's certainly times when you can play small ball, but I think that most of the time you're going to need to have some of the bigger guys. You're going to want to have Noel on their court, or my opinion is I'd love to see Duran start even. And once Bagley comes back, there'll be some more size there. So I think we just need to. Casey's got a challenge on his hands, and I know Piston fans are going to really have opinions and really come after Coach Casey. I love Coach Casey. I'm not sure he's the greatest coach in the world, but I love his temperament. I love the way he treats his players. I love the way he doesn't, let a bad game affect him. He just turns the page and fights back to try to do better. But still, we have 15 guys on our roster that all could be argued that they deserve playing time. And, there's all out of that, how many combinations of lineups, different combinations are there? There's a million. So everybody's always going to have their opinion, including me, about what lineup should be out there. But Coach Casey is going to, I think, have a tough year. I mean, I'm thrilled that Troy has finally given him a roster. Troy says it's a complete roster that can compete every night. But it's almost like too many players. I know right away we've had injuries. So with all the injuries, that's given players. I'm not happy that anybody got hurt, but I am thrilled because I really want Ivy. If Alec Burks was playing right away, maybe Ivy wouldn't get as much of a run. And if if Bagley was not hurt, then they might not play Duran as much. And I want to see those two guys play. I mean, I just want them to be out on the court. So we're going to talk about the roster that Troy's assembled. And one thing that you want to know, when Troy Weaver always says he drafts the person first, not the player. He drafts the person first. And so they always got to get the person right. And I think that for the most part that he has done that. And there's a psychologist named Angela Lee Duckworth, and she did a study, and she tried to figure out why are some people more successful than other people. And it wasn't always because they had more talent. It always wasn't because they were smarter or bigger or whatever in different fields. There was always something that made some people succeed when other people didn't. And she came to the conclusion that that was perseverance and passion, what she called grit. And so even though Troy Weaver might have not heard of Angela Lee Duckworth's study, Troy has drafted and assembled a bunch of gritty players. And so even when we don't have as much gifted athletes defensively, we have a lot of gritty players. And so we're going to talk about some of those players and how Troy assembled those players and dive into each one. And the first one we're going to start talking about today is Bojan Bogdanovic. He is just a flat-out baller. He can catch the ball at the three-point line, and he has such a quick, smooth release. He releases the ball high. If you run at him, he can blow right by you. He is clever, crafty, and he is an assassin. He made so many big shots in the playoffs. I know Piston fans often don't get to see Utah play, but I mean, he's averaging 18 a game on a team that had the best record in the NBA just a couple years ago. You can average 18 a game like Kelly Olynyk did on the Houston Rockets a few years ago when they were awful, and so somebody has to score. But when you're averaging 18 a game on the best team in the league, you're a good player, and he can shoot. The thing I could say I like best about him is you can tell right away he is talking to players, he's talking to coaches. He is the right person. He is going to make us better. And he's, I'm concerned that he's going to take away minutes from Isaiah Livers, and I want Livers to get to play and develop. I really am optimistic about him. We only have Bojan on contract for one more year, and so, do you want to take minutes away from a guy that's going to be a part of your future? But I think that he is going to not only teach the players how to play better and talk to them how to play better, but he's going to let players have a chance to develop by just sitting out there in the corner and making those threes and making the defense have to respect the shooter. With Cade, everybody just packed the paint. Cade drives in there. He's double teamed all the time, and everybody can get away with it because we didn't have shooters. The Bojan thing was just a perfect example of the master class that Troy Weaver teaches every day to us. Nobody, I think, saw that coming, the trade for Bojan. I don't even know if Danny Ainge saw that trade coming, but he was able to get rid of two players that we needed. We had too many centers, and we had too many point guards, and we didn't have enough roster spots. And in one trade, and we didn't have enough wings or 3-point shooting. So in one swift move, Troy Weaver got rid of a center, a point guard, an extra roster spot, and then he brought in a wing that we needed with great 3-point shooting. So that was just a perfect example. Now we have the option of, keeping him. And I think James Edwards said that we were going to try to re-sign him possibly. And, that could be fine, even though he doesn't really fit our player's timeline. But he also is just a great person to have on the team. Cade said, even after 2 days, it was so easy to play with him and so comfortable playing with him. And it's just because he just knows how to play. And so even though you don't have the time on the court with him, if you're playing with other great players, I've seen this throughout my life, you can play, you can fit in really well. I think that if things aren't going great and we end up trading him or we get value for him, we'll do it. Troy's not going to do it unless, he's going to get value or something, that's going to help our team going forward. So we'll just have to wait and see on that. But it was just a great move by Troy Weaver, and whether, it works out that he stays with us or whether he leaves, I think he's going to be a huge addition to our team. June 22nd, 2001, one of the greatest days in Piston history, Big Ben Wallace brought us lottery luck, and we were able to choose Cade Cunningham. And I'm just going to tell you, I love Cade. And you're on this podcast, you're going to find out. Cade struggled at the beginning of last year, and here he is, 20-year-old kid, and he misses all of the preseason. He misses all of training camp. And he has to come in after about the 5th game and jump right into the NBA, and that could be a struggle for anybody. And he struggled mightily, but the thing about Cade is he has a lot of perseverance and passion. He has grit, and he just fought through it, and he was playing so well by the end of the year. Cade is so respected by people all over the league and people who cover the league. I know we often thank Piston fans that we have a lot of people that don't really follow us. Nobody gives us love. Nobody watches us. But the people in the know, people like Bill Simmons and Zach Lowe that cover the NBA for 20 years, they see what a great player he is and what great potential he has. And he is our assistant general manager said, he said that he's a natural born leader. And you just watch Cade, everything he says, everything he does, how he doesn't force things on people. He just can step into a room and make everybody feel comfortable and make everybody feel better. And so, there's a lot of really good young cores right now in the NBA. And I think some of them probably even have more talent than the Pistons do, even though we have lots of talent. But we have Cade. I really think Cade is going to be the difference maker. Every great team needs that leader. And the Pistons had it with Isaiah as a point guard and Chauncey. And those guys led us to championships. And I really believe that Cade has what it takes. He's not maybe the most gifted player that ever played, But he can drive the ball to the basket left-handed or right-handed. He's got these little driving hooks. He's got that little turnaround reverse pivot fadeaway. He's got the pull-up jumper. And I know he's working a lot on his shot. And I watched the team play all last year, and it bothered me that as a coach that really emphasized shooting the ball with my high school team, I noticed that Cade did not get enough arc. And I mentioned that to Coach Beeline. I said, Coach, Cade doesn't get enough arc. Do you guys try to work on that? He said, yeah, every day we work on it. I noticed an article that the summer his brother and his cousin that helped train him, they said they worked on two things primarily: his arc and his body, getting him stronger. But he still, I went down to that open practice and I took some pictures, and his arm went out instead of up. And Coach Beeline said that, yeah, we have to work on that. We got to retrain that shoulder, which is true, to lift up instead of go forward. And that's easier said than done when you've shot a million shots like Cade has. Your muscle memory just steps in there, and you don't get the arc. But I am confident that Cade has the determination. Cade wants to be great, and he wants his team to be great. And I just believe with all my heart that he's going to get that done. Even though preseason he shot awful. He turned it over 4 times, but 4 times is a lot for a game. But he was only playing like 20 minutes. Another thing with Cade that's troublesome is that last year that used to drive me crazy is he would get in foul trouble. And he'd get in foul trouble, and then he'd go, he's such a competitor. When somebody gets beat, most of the time his fouls were not fouling his man. They were trying to, when he helped on defense, when someone else got beat, Cade would try to help. And when he tried to help, he would come in, but he'd whack at him. And, he'd get what I call dumb fouls, and it was very frustrating for me. And so that happened this preseason already once, but hopefully he gets that under control. But I watch Cade off the ball defensively, and he is so engaged and he is so active and he moves so quickly, even though he's not a great athlete. But I just love watching him play, and I love everything about him and who he is. And I just really think we are blessed to have such a great player on our team. Next player I'm going to talk about is Jaden Ivey. And I will be honest with you, and I know some people are going to get mad at me, but I probably by just an eyelash might have taken Benedict Mathurin, and only because his outside shot right at the current time is more consistent, his form is better, but I love Ivey. I love watching him play. I'm so excited that he gets to be on my team, and I mean every night there's going to be some highlight plays that when in the preseason that time some guy went up for a shot and elevated way up above the rim. And Jaden jumps up with 2 hands way over the rim and grabs the ball right out of the sky, just like John Morant did on a highlight last year, and ended up getting the jump ball. But he is, just a freak of nature. And the thing that I was most impressed with him, that I have been so far at the open practice and the preseason games, is his ability to get into the paint. And we know that he's fast and quick, but he also has the ability, much like Giannis, even though he's not obviously near as tall as Giannis, but he can go like downhill in a straight line, and the defense, there could be 2 or 3 players back, and he can still, go one way, get them to shift their weight just a little bit, and then go straight line right to the basket. And I've been very impressed with his passing, and I think he did have way too many. He had 7 turnovers one game. But I just think that he's going to, draw lots of defenders to him, and he's a willing passer that's going to kick it out, and we're going to get wide open shots. And we shot terrible last year on open threes, and the NBA, the average NBA player can make a really great percentage on open threes. I don't know what the percentage is, but it's really high. And the great players are the ones that can make the contested threes. But we're just going to get a lot of good looks with Cade and Jaden and Killian, because they all can get into the lane, and they're all willing passers. And so that's going to, I think, there's not much better offense than I coached a long time, and you always like to get the ball inside, but you can run. I run lots of plays and things, but I still think the best play is just if you get that ball in the paint, everybody's eyes, and the defense just sucks in there, and then somebody's open, and then even if that person doesn't score that you kick it to, then the next person has to help, and then they're scrambling, and then you can get offensive rebounds and things. So I just think Jaden's going to be a fantastic player for us, and we're really lucky that we get to watch him play every night. And I think that his shot, people have to back off him so far because of the threat of him driving, that he can just shoot that little set shot where he just calmly shoots it because they have to give him space. So I think that he's going to get a lot of good threes and good looks, and I think that he's going to probably be a decent shooter, but we'll see. I think his elbow's out a little bit. I don't like the way he doesn't extend his arm on his follow-through, but we'll see. I think he's going to be just a terrific player for us. The next player I'm going to talk about is Jalen Duren, and in the draft, I was excited to get Ivy, and I will tell you, I went to the draft party at the Palace, at this Little Caesars, and it was really funny. The biggest applause of the night was when the fourth pick was announced, and when it was announced that Keegan Murray was drafted by Sacramento, the crowd erupted, and it's because they wanted Ivy and they didn't want Murray. And Murray's a really good player, but they were really excited to get Ivy, and so that was really cool to see how passionate the Pistons were about him. And it's been really cool seeing how passionate Ivy was to play for the Pistons, and so I think it's going to be a great future for us. But I was even more excited about getting Duren because I to be honest, I was disappointed going into the winter. I thought we had three different things that could make us a lot better team going into the winter. We had Jeremy Grant to trade, and I was confident we would get something of great value for Jeremy Grant. We had a high draft pick coming up, and then we had lots of cap space. And so I was really disappointed, and then we traded Jeremy Grant finally for the Milwaukee Bucks 2025 first round pick. And as long as they have Giannis, that pick is going to be in the 20s or late 20s even. And so I thought that's all we got for Jeremy Grant. And so I was very disappointed, and I didn't know what was going to happen. And so when we finally made the trade for Jeremy Grant and received the Milwaukee Bucks 2025 first round pick, I was very disappointed. I was hoping that we would be able to trade that pick. I was really hoping to get Portland's 7th pick because they had the 7th pick in the draft, and everybody knew that they had been after Jeremy Grant for since the trade deadline in February. And so I was very disappointed that we got that late first round pick that probably wasn't going to amount to anything. And then we thought we had equal odds. We had a 14% chance of getting one of the first 3 picks, and we fell to the 5th spot. So that was disappointing because I thought we'd get one of the big guys. And then Troy Weaver worked his magic. So we somehow, nobody still can figure out how we did it on draft night. They were still confused about how we were able to flip the 25th 2025 pick of the Milwaukee Bucks and get the 13th pick in this year's draft, which ended up being Jalen Duren. And Jalen Duren, by a lot of people, you never know with draft picks how good they're going to turn out, but a lot of people were really high on him, especially the Pistons and Troy Weaver. Speculation is that he had Duren in his top 5 or at least top 7. So we came away with, when it looked like we were getting nothing for Jeremy Grant or virtually nothing, we came away with Jalen Duren. So I get very tired of listening to podcasters and reading articles and hearing people say that, oh, Jalen Duren, he's the youngest one. And they say it over and over again. He's the youngest player in the NBA. And, he's going to have to play in the G League. And he's just going to have to be patient, not play him. But I'm saying, play that kid, man. He can play. He can jump right out of the gym. And the thing about him is he is skilled. He is a very skilled passer, very willing passer, and that's not common in big guys. And he is just a talented person. Sure, he's going to need time to develop. But in the meantime, he played 20 minutes a game in the preseason and averaged 12 rebounds. And if that's all you did, you are going to be an asset. And especially, as a coach, one of the best things to get in basketball are offensive rebounds, and Duran goes after every rebound just like Dennis Rodman. And he, when you get those offensive rebounds, you're going to either get a kick out for a wide open three, or you're going to get an easy shot underneath the basket most of the time. So offensive rebounds are a huge thing. But Duran is just a gifted athlete. I just hope they play him. I'm not happy Bagley got injured, but I think that Duran's going to get a chance, and I'm confident if he gets a chance, he's going to get to play good. But I don't think it ever was in the cards that somebody asked Troy about Duran playing in the G League, and Weaver said that's never been a plan. And there's also somebody was talking to Coach Casey about Duran, and he said this guy is a jewel, and I mean you just don't take a jewel and hide it somewhere. So I think that we are going to get to see him, and he is going to have ups and downs, just like Ivy, just like Cade. But I think that he's going to develop into an incredible player, and he's going to give us that rim protector that we need, and that also he's going to be able to get off all those rebounds. But I really do believe that he is going to evolve with his passing and his shot, even because he is skilled and talented. A lot of big guys just can't shoot; they just don't have the touch or the feel. And I really do believe that Duran has that touch and the feel. So the next player we talk about is going to be Saddiq Bey, and I love Saddiq. Saddiq is so gritty, and he is legendary already for how he's the hardest worker and one of the hardest workers in the NBA. And again, I could make a few people mad, I think, but I hope that he ends up being a great player. I think that if he, at the very least, he could end up being a very good part of a really great team. And this year is going to be a real good opportunity to find out exactly what he's going to be. And sure, he can evolve, in the future, but I think that we need to find out, because he currently is, he'll force the drive and he can't really elevate. So he gets in there and he gets stuck oftentimes. The positive thing is when he does force the drive and gets smothered, often he draws some fouls. And so that's always a positive thing. Just like with Ivy. So that's another huge thing with Ivy that I forgot to mention, that Ivy is going to draw fouls, man. He drives in there and he elevates and he can twist and he can turn and he can spin the ball off his hand, and he finds ways to put that ball in the basket. It's very, very clever. But Saddiq is, he's supposed to be a 3-and-D guy. I was really happy when we drafted him. I thought that was where we drafted him. I said instantly that's a good pick. But he shot the three better last year, or his rookie year, than he did last year. And so I think he needs to hopefully shoot the three better this year, and he needs to try to pick his places. And I think it's really hard. I think he really, in his heart, wants to be one of the best players in the league, but I'm not sure he has the talent to be one of the best players in the league. So if he tries to take shots that aren't really that good of shots for him, and he tries to force things, then I think that's going to hurt his production, and it's going to also hurt our team. So I think that we'll just have to wait and see what happens. And I think that Saddiq is just one gritty player, and I think he's always going to be an asset to have on your team. And again, like I said, hopefully he comes to, finds out where his niche is in the league and on our team, and I hope that, he's around for a long, long time. Next player I'd like to talk about is Beef Stew. And another player, man, he is so gritty. And I know that when Troy drafted him, I studied some of the draft boards, and he wasn't even on a lot of the draft boards for how high he went. But I think that he played AU maybe with one of Troy's kids, and Troy got a chance to see him, or Troy was friends with his college coach or something. So the next player we're going to talk about is Isaiah Stewart. And Isaiah Stewart is, again, just all grit, and he works so hard, tirelessly, and he's limited athletically. Again, like I said earlier, it's really hard for him to get up quick. He doesn't have great hands catching the ball a lot of times, but he battles every single minute of every single game, and there's a lot to be said for that. Lots been said about his shooting, and he's a three-point shooter, and I think that is going to be a huge difference in his trajectory. I think that I thought and felt like after going into last year that he was going to be a valuable asset, but I always thought that he could be a player that came off the bench on a championship team and that he could provide, like Corliss Williamson or one of the great backup players we've had in Piston history. But I think that with the development of the three-point shot, I think that he has a lot more potential, and I think that the ability for us to have two big guys on the court, and eventually I hope that we get to play Stewart and Duran together, or Stewart and Bagley together, or Stewart and Livers together. I think that makes us a lot better, a lot tougher inside. So I think his three-point shooting, really took off at the end of last year. So, if you say he's just, there's not very much of a sample size for him, and there's not, but still, he made 11 of his 18 threes at the end of last year, which is incredible. And then in the summer league, he shot about 50% on threes. In the Rico Hines scrimmages this summer, every highlight, of course, every shot goes in, but you got to see him make a bunch of shots in the Rico Hines footage. And then this preseason, he has shot the lights out. And I can tell you from my experiences, coaching shooters, I've had a lot of success coaching the three-point shot, and our teams have been, put up big numbers from three. And the thing that happened in the last preseason game, I think he missed his first four, and then he came right back and knocked in, may end up making like 5 out of 10. And so that's the real sign of a shooter, is when you're struggling. It's interesting to me. Last year, until the very end of the season, he did not even attempt threes. Even they just didn't even guard him. And it also will be interesting, in that last preseason game, they were not guarding him. When we played the Grizzlies, they just left him wide open. And so again, people can make threes if they're left wide open, but we'll see what happens with him. But I love Beef Stew, and I love the passion that he brings. There was a really great documentary. Any Isaiah Stewart fan, I think, would really appreciate the documentary. I think it's only like 18 minutes long, and they go back with him to his hometown, and you get to see where he comes from and what all the great things he's doing for the people there. And I know that we got to see his passion when he was going after LeBron, and that's he has a lot going for him. He has a huge passion for the game. He's, on all accounts, he's a great guy, and he's going to be a great asset to us going forward. So the next player I want to talk about is Hamidou Diallo. And Troy just has this thing about, he finds players, and I really appreciated this about him, where he gets these guys who are high draft picks for virtually nothing and gives them a shot. And before, we always had lots of extra roster spots. We didn't have much talent, so it didn't hurt anything to bring them in, because we didn't give up anything for them, and one of them could pop. And we thought, Hami, he's just a freak athlete and a real good player, but he can't shoot, and he's not always engaged defensively, and so it's going to be really challenging for him to find a place on the floor. I will say that interesting to me as a coach, when last year he was going to get to play, and then he got injured at the beginning of the year, and then he wasn't playing much, and Coach Casey wanted to put him in the game, and he kind of got mad and wasn't pouting or wouldn't go in the game, and then he wasn't getting to play, like I said earlier, not very much playing time. And then Troy Weaver came down out of the stands, and Troy had worked with him, I think, at Oklahoma City. He had been on the squad, on the roster when Troy was there, and so he pulled him up to his office or whatever right during the game, and after that, all of a sudden, Hamidou got to play a lot, which, I have, mixed feelings about that here's this guy, but, the general manager's the boss, and the coach, felt like he had to play him after that. But he had some productive days. It's just now with our roster is so full, I'm just not sure what's going to happen and where there's playing time. Again, we had 15 guys that you could argue are NBA players that could get playing time, and you just can't play 15 guys. So it'll be interesting what happens to Hamidou. I don't think everybody say, well, trade him, but I'm not sure there's any market for Hamidou. There's a lot of gifted guys in the NBA and out of the NBA, but we'll see what happens with him. So I'm not sure. Then next guy we're going to talk about is Alec Burks, and it's real fascinating. What I always like to do when the Pistons get a new player is I go find where the guys, the beat writers for the team they came from, and see them talk about that player. And so I went, and researched where the Knicks and listened to what they had to say about Alec Burks, and they had nothing but good things to say about him. And that he is a flat-out baller, and that he's a great three-point shooter, and he's killed the Pistons, and but he had to play point guard, which is really not his position, and but he's a pretty good defender, and he's a phenomenal three-point shooter, but he can also attack you off the dribble, and so I think he's a valuable asset. Again, Troy is masterful. We get these players, so we have him under contract for this year. And next year we have a team option, and his contract is not that high. So we have lots of options. So again, we could trade him, we can sign him on a real team-friendly contract again for the following year, and we'll just see what happens. We're in the place where we're just trying to evaluate things and try to accumulate assets and see where it takes us. And so, he's 31 years old. He doesn't quite fit the timeline, but he could, again, when you have guys like Cade and Ivy and they need to be able to penetrate, they can't develop if there's just guys sitting in the lane and not guarding people out at the three-point line. So I'm excited about Burks. Again, like I said, I'm not sad that he got injured. I'm not happy he got injured, but some people try to speculate where the Burks would start instead of Ivy, and I want Ivy and I want Duran. I want them just to play. Whether they play 20 minutes or 25 minutes, I just want to see them out on the court. And if you play Alec Burks 30-some minutes, and then they're only playing 10 or 15 minutes, and I'm not really excited about that. So, Marvin Bagley is a player that a lot of people have different opinions on, but people said that Troy, before we even traded for Bagley, even the year before, that Troy Weaver had lots of interest in Bagley. And I heard people, criticize and said, why did we trade for him? He was going to be a restricted free agent anyway, so we could have just signed him without giving up anybody. Well, we gave up Josh Jackson, who wasn't a part of our future, and we gave up Trey Lyles, who was not going to be part of our future. And so to trade them for Bagley and get to have him in our locker room and on our practice court and in games, before we had to think about re-signing him, we got to really evaluate him up close and personal. And I think there's so much to be said for that. So, I think that's a genius move by Troy. Some people criticized his contract that we gave him and said, who are we bidding against? Maybe we were only bidding against ourselves, but obviously Troy valued him. He was outstanding last year, I felt. He, his averaged 14 points, shot about 60%, 7 rebounds a game. And there's always a place for a guy like that on the team. Sure, his defense is not great, and I'm not positive that Marvin Bagley is the grittiest guy in the world. And so, unlike Sadiq and Beef Stew, I think that he, I don't see him react. He's athletic enough that he should be a great defender. He can jump. He has one of the quickest jumps in the league. He can get offensive rebounds. I love the way he can attack the basket. He has all these different spin moves and jump hooks, and he has a lot of different ways to put the ball in the basket. And again, last year with the Pistons, he was very efficient. And so I do think there's a place in the league. We signed him again for 3 years, so people were surprised. Troy usually tries to give us a little more flexibility, so some people thought maybe he should have signed 2 years plus a team option for the third year. But I think that even though we signed him maybe for a couple million more per year than what maybe his market value was, I still think that it was more than worthwhile to give him a shot and keep him around for 3 years. I think he'll always be able to have some value off the bench. So I like Marvin Bagley, and I hope that things turn out for him. The next player I want to talk about is Rodney McGruder. So Rodney, everybody, by all accounts, Rodney's the coolest guy on the team. Rodney's the guy that everybody loves. And and Rodney comes in the game and he plays well. And he shot the ball from three well. He shot the ball even in the preseason well, and for whatever reason, he's not considered to be a great player. So we even traded him once, and then we signed him back. And Troy's done that. I mean, how many guys has Troy cut and then brought them back? Because Troy loves his players, the guys that he's in on. He's a very loyal person, and I think that's, maybe it can hurt you from time to time being super loyal. But I think overall, it's a positive. Troy Weaver's loyalty to people, I think that's created a really good culture for us. And I think Rodney Magruder has created a very great culture for us. But I think that, he's probably not going to get to play. And I hope they don't play him because there's just not enough minutes. So he's probably like number 15 on the team in the pecking order. So just like Rodney Magruder, Corey Joseph is a great guy. You can just tell. You just watch him on the court when they're warming up, or anytime you watch him, when he's in the game even, he's got that smile on his face. He's always plays his butt off every night. He was phenomenal at shooting this past year, but I will say this. Pistons had some problems last year. We had Frank Jackson, who was pretty good the year before, but Frank wanted, every time he touched the ball, it was going up. And Coach O does the same thing. He wants to shoot the ball. I think he dribbled it more times per touch than almost anybody in the NBA. He just likes to dribble the ball instead of moving the ball. And, it's fine if he wants to shoot it when he's open, but he, I think held back some of the other players from developing, and I think he's a valuable asset. But again, I think that he's probably number 14 on the squad. And so there's just not enough minutes. If they tried, I think Coach Casey loves him. And understandably so. As a coach, I love guys just like him. But I just think you can only play so many players. And when I coached in high school, which again, high school is a completely different thing than the NBA. It's not even in the same stratosphere. But you're still dealing with basketball and you're still dealing with people. And there's a lot more minutes in an NBA game. But I always wanted to just have like 10 players on my team. And I think that because there's never enough playing time to go around. And so I always felt bad for the people who were sitting out. Now here we are with the Pistons. We got like 15 guys that are good enough to get minutes in the NBA. And you just can't, if you're spreading out the minutes real thin to everybody, then nobody's going to develop. And again, our key is for our young players to develop. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Corey Joseph this year and how much he's used. And I know that most Piston fans don't like him. They almost dislike him because he's taken away minutes from our young guys that we want to develop. But that's not his fault. But I do think that he needs to just sit there on the bench and cheer guys on and help guys in the locker room and whatever. And I think that he needs to, we'll see what happens with him. I think that could be a good NBA player, but I think he's, not on our timeline, and we just have too many other players we need to play. So the next player, I know everybody always talks about him as the most controversial person on the Pistons squad, and that is Killian Hayes. And so much has been said about Killian, and I have one of my good friend that's a big Piston fan, Noah. Shout out to Noah. Noah worships Killian Hayes, and the fact is that if any other player, you look at Rodney Magruder, he comes in and he plays really good, and then he doesn't get to play. And Killian, his rookie year, he was terrible. He shot terrible from 2, he shot terrible from 3, he turned the ball over, he got injured, he didn't do much. And so then, but he got to start, he always got chances. And partway, again, it was because I think Troy Weaver drafted him, and Troy drafted him with a high pick, and so I think there was pressure for Dwayne Casey where, somebody like Kojo or Magruder could play great, they weren't going to get a chance, but Killian was always going to get a chance. And he does have some gifts that are very valuable for an NBA player. He is a phenomenal passer, and there's nothing I love seeing a great pass more than a great shot, and he can throw some great passes. And I love, he's not a super athlete. He is a really good athlete, but he's not super. He's got good size for a guard, but he plays his butt off on defense, and he's very smart and very active and very aggressive defensively. So everybody's always wanting him to be more aggressive, and so everybody's saying, he's just got to be more confident. He's got to be more aggressive, and I'm not sold on that. I think that he does need to be able to shoot and make the open three, and I think that he does need to be aggressive at times. But everybody can't shoot the ball. Everybody on a team, you can't have 5 guys that are all shooting it 20 times a game. So somebody's got to pass the ball, and so I think that he's felt a lot of pressure, and I think that his confidence has been shaken at times, and I think I'm intrigued by like the first preseason game. Everybody was so thrilled that he was aggressive, but he was 5 for 13, and 5 for 13 is not great. And he did make some good passes, and he did play okay, but he took the most shots of anybody on our team, and he is not the best offensive player on our team. So my coaching philosophy is you want your best scorers to shoot the most shots. And so then the next game he was even worse. So he was like 6 for 20 the first 2 games, and that's not good. But people were praising him because he was more aggressive. So we'll see what happens with Killian. I am completely all in on him getting to play minutes this year. I mean, again, I am not for tanking, but I think all the young guys need to play. We need to try to win as hard as we can, but I think we need to find out exactly what Killian's going to be. I think there's certainly a world where he could be a really good backup guard on even a really good playoff team, and I think he can get better. And he has shown signs. So the last preseason game he played in, he had probably his best game. So it was against Oklahoma City, and he made a high percentage of his shots. He made 4 out of 6 threes, I think, and even though he shot an air ball on one of the ones he missed, and he got fouled on a 3, and he missed all 3 free throws, and so that makes you think, how great a shooter is he? But I'm really excited for him, and I hope that he has a good year. I really hope that regardless of how he plays, that he gets minutes, and again, that we get to find out what kind of player he is. So next player I'm going to talk about is Kevin Knox, and people said, why do we sign Kevin Knox? So it's another one of Troy Weaver's. I love those moves. He was top 10 pick in the draft the year he came out, and he can shoot the 3. He's 6'7". He's a versatile wing. In the last preseason game, he made 3 shots, 3 threes, 3 out of 6, I think, and made a really great dunk, and he has potential. Where is there minutes for him? We'll see. I don't know. He plays the wing, and we got Sadiq's got to play a bunch of minutes, and Bojan's got to play a bunch of minutes, and Livers has got to play a bunch of minutes. So I'm not sure where there's going to be minutes for Kevin Knox, but hopefully he does get to play some. But one of my favorite players that I'm really excited about is Isaiah Livers. And so, like I said earlier, I love Bogdanovic, but I hope that Livers gets to play because we need to find out. Maybe he's not the greatest player in the world, but he has the most beautiful shot, in my opinion, of anybody on the team. His 3-point shot is just, his form is perfect, and he's a real smart player on defense, and he's a little more athletic than I think a lot of people really think that he is. And I love the way he moves the ball. I mean, if he catches it and he's not open, he moves it. Again, that's what Frank Jackson and Corey Joseph and those guys don't do. They just hold on. Same with Trey Lyles. Trey Lyles drove the ball to the basket. He forced up shots every time he touched it. And so I think that Isaiah Livers won't do that. And I think that he certainly has a potential to be a great piece going forward and being a really good part of a really good team. The last player I'm going to talk about today is Buddy Boeheim, and most of you know that Troy Weaver was Jim Boeheim, Buddy's dad's assistant at Syracuse, and so they've had this long time friendship. Buddy was an outstanding college player, not just a good college player. He was a really good college player. He could shoot the 3, which again the Pistons need more shooting. But I can just tell you from watching him at the open scrimmage when he came in the game, whoever had the ball, whoever he was guarding, they were just going to drive it to the basket, and Buddy couldn't do much to stop them. And so we'll see. I doubt Buddy has a long future in the NBA, but again, Troy is very loyal to his friends and is willing to give people chances. Like Luka Garza. Luka, He wasn't the most talented athlete. He had lots of grit, and he played with Troy's son in AAU for I don't know how many years. But so Troy, does have connections. He's been around a long time. But it doesn't cost us anything, and Buddy's not going to play, and so I think that it's fine that we have Buddy Boeheim around our team. I will say this: that the highlight of the open scrimmage was at the end, and they had all the rookies out on the court, and they had a DJ there, and the guys were dancing. Different guys took turns dancing, and finally, the last guy to dance, they made Buddy Boeheim dance, and so you know Buddy got out there and tried to bust some moves, and it was pretty funny. And so, anyway, the players had lots of fun. Buddy had lots of fun, and the players were all bumping each other afterwards, and it was really cool. So, anyway, I hope Buddy, whatever happens is good for Buddy. And I want to thank you all for taking your time to listen to this podcast. It's the first podcast I've ever done in my life. Again, I'm a huge Piston fan. I love our team. I'm excited for our team. I would like to thank each and every one of you for taking time today to listen to the Piston Fanatic. I especially want to shout out my wife Kelly for all of her patience and hard work in helping me put this podcast together, and my nephew Nathan in Texas for all of his time and patience. I hope each of you can do something nice for someone today to make their day better, and I hope you come back and listen next time. If you enjoyed this podcast, please spread the word and share it with a friend. Thank you.